I have been teaching effectuation in one form or the other for the past almost 10 years, ever since the dissertation data began to be collected. I've taught it as a standalone course, like a 15-week course, as a 10-week course, as a 7-week course, and also as small 2-day executive education modules and so on. Overall, the way I think about teaching it is to teach people the idea of 2 toolboxes, because most people come to the class with the causal thinking already known to them. I mean, either they've gone to business school, or they are MBA students, or so they've taken courses which have really taught them the causal thinking. So for us to come in and just teach effectuation on its own is very difficult. And in some ways, it's actually nice to have this contrasting thing with the causal thinking as a way to teach effectuation. So I tell them, okay, you have this toolbox. So the way I teach almost all the initial cases is to give them the stories of entrepreneurs and actually just tell them the idea or the venture, and I'll tell them, how would you build it? And their natural instinct very often for most of the people in the class would be to do it the causal way, which is to say I would go get some market research data, and then I would write a little marketing plan. I will estimate how much money I need. I'll go raise the money from somewhere, and then I'll implement it. That's the way they think about it. And then I would tell them how the venture actually happened. If you go to the histories of these ventures, very often you will see that it didn't happen that way. But once you give them a little exposure to the effectual reasoning, it's actually very easy for them to get it. And thereafter, the class discussions are usually about, okay, here's how you do it causally. So how would you do it effectually? Or if the initial discussion was to do it effectually, because some people get really enthusiastic once they hear about the effectual method and they want to do everything effectually. And then you want to challenge them, okay, but how would you do that causally? And the whole idea is to get them to think about these 2 toolboxes, and also to think about what are the pros and cons of doing it one way or the other. So at any given point of time, you always have choices of doing it either way, or sometimes even mix and match. And that's the beauty of a dichotomy. In research, we tend to be against dichotomies for the most part, and yet in teaching, it's a very useful way because the human mind is kind of dialectic. So you take a position for, you take a position against, you try to put it together, match it, and so on. And so that's kind of the philosophy of how I teach it. In terms of the format and the contents, it's usually very good early on to get the students to commit to a venture. So they're not just trying to learn this abstractly, but they're always thinking, how would I do it in my venture? So after the first couple of days in class, I try to push them to come up with an idea on which they're actually working. And once you have taught them about who I am, what I know, and whom I know, they understand they can come up with ideas that are workable. And I tell them these ideas need not be blockbuster, new to the world, revolutionary ideas. It can just be something, your hobby of some kind, or your pet peeve, something that happened to you yesterday which you hate and you say, I want to change that. Or it could be something that you really love. Maybe you really want to build a new kind of an art school or something. So I don't restrict them to for-profit ventures. It's okay. It starts with who you are, what you know, and whom you know, and something that is worth doing for which you're willing to make a commitment and lose something. At the very least, you're willing to lose this semester, working on that project. And so the project is what drives it. And I try to bring the student projects into the discussion, the case discussions as we go along. So that's kind of my overall plan on how to teach. As part of this process, I've been working on a textbook, and I'm very fortunate to be at the Darden School, where pedagogy is considered really important. Teaching is a very important part of who we are, and there are lots of teaching resources at Darden. And we are going to build a website with cases from different parts of the world, because we don't want to be using standard US cases when we teach effectuation, say in Africa. So a way to bring in materials from different parts of the world. And so we've been working on developing these resources for teachers and for teaching effectuation.